All right, you're on the Arms Room with Glenn.
And John.
Mason?
You know what? He got it fixed in time.
He did. You're a good man, Mason.
Golf clap.
Good job. Well done. Well done. So I have to tell you guys about this movie I watched last night. I actually stayed up till 2 a.m. watching a movie with my wife, and it's a freaking weird movie. Everyone told me it was so awesome, so I watched Interstellar. Everyone kept telling me how awesome it was. My one buddy's like, I went and saw it like 4 times in the theater. It's so great. I watched it. My head hurt afterwards. I
have no urge to see that.
I did not understand what was going on at the end.
It was entertaining. There were some cool images in the movie, but you're right. It was kind of like Inception towards the end. You're like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, the premise of the whole movie was really cool. Like, they go to other worlds and they're trying to find a habitable place for, Earth. And it was very cool. Like the idea of traveling through this wormhole and ending up in another galaxy and like exploring new planets and all. That was cool. And then they went full retard and I did not understand what was going on. Maybe I'm the full retard. I don't know, but I did not understand. At the end, there was all this time travel stuff going on, and I was confused.
On a side note, also the first movie that Matthew McConaughey didn't take his shirt off in.
Yeah, I think my wife
the first time ever.
She was pretty disappointed because she was like, "What's Interstellar about?" And I go, "It's got Matthew McConaughey."
No, yeah, usually every single movie he will take his shirt off, but he did not take his shirt off.
He did not take his shirt off in Dazed and Confused.
Nope, it was off.
Are you?
Hey!
Actually, I have no idea.
Hey, queers! Stop.
I just made that up.
Stop right now. I'm scared. The fact you guys have memorized that information, or now that you're arguing about it. My goodness.
Whatever.
All right. How was your weekend, John? What'd you
do? Friday, we Independence Training taught a defensive handgun class to a bunch of fantastic students up in Chino Valley. That was fun.
It was a blast.
It was. I actually had a good time. The weather was great.
It was awesome. I loved
rain, sleet, snow, hail.
The hail was specifically fantastic.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. Yeah. And cold. God, it was cold all freaking day.
It was. It was in the low 50s with, I would say, a solid 10-degree wind chill at least.
Yeah, at least. It was pretty miserable.
I wore my coat the entire day, and that's atypical for me while training.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was good, though. It was good. Saturday, then we taught an invasive trauma interventions class.
How'd that go?
It was great, man. It was a lot of fun. Lots of IVs got stuck. Lots of hoses went in noses. It was good stuff. Really, really good time. Yeah, over at the Tactical Medic. If you haven't checked out the Tactical Medic, you should, because Sean over there really has like everything you could ever possibly need or want for medical stuff. I mean,
and if he doesn't have it, he probably knows where he can get it.
Yeah, he probably does. I mean, we've used Sean for years and years. So he's a great guy, good friend, good person, and great host for our classes as well. So what else is going on? Anything great going on in the world right now? What's happening? Baltimore, still a total crap hole. Fantastic. Yeah, what else is going on? I'm trying to think of other good.
It's been a pretty quiet weekend.
Yeah,
it was. I don't remember anything. Oh, I heard
there was
Arkansas had a giant tornado and a mobile home trailer park was hit.
No,
because why not?
Shocking, right? I was shocked. So it's funny the way they say it on the news too, because they're like, it was a tornado in Arkansas, blah blah blah, and so many people were hurt, killed, injured, whatever. When the tornado hit a trailer park, and you're like, is there a punchline coming up soon?
It's terrible.
They always hit the trailer parks, like tornadoes are drawn to them or something. It's terrible.
Yeah.
All right. So today on the show, we've got Jason from Dillon Precision. And how you doing, Jason?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Excellent, man. Thanks for coming into the show and being willing to talk with us. So kind of tell us, let's just jump right into it. Tell us about why reloading is a must-know skill. Why should people, maybe who don't even have a lot of interest in reloading, why should people know how to do it?
Well, I think really the majority of people get involved in reloading is for economy. It's usually about a quarter to half as much to reload as it is to go buy factory ammunition. The other benefits are accuracy. You should be able to at least replicate factory ammunition, if not supersede the accuracy you're getting out of that ammunition with your own reloads. basically setting it up for your rifle, your pistol, whatever loads you particularly need for that platform.
Now, how about function? Because I know one thing that our students often ask us when we're shooting, because we shoot a lot, is they'll ask us like, well, you know, gosh, where do you guys get all your ammo? If you shoot all this, it's like, well, most of it's reloaded stuff. Oh, do you trust that?
I think on the whole, I actually trust it a lot more than factory ammunition, at least from my own personal experiences. For a while there, you used to be able to get 9mm ammo really, really inexpensive at Walmart or some of the other big box stores. And I was really surprised to see, you know, Winchester, Remington ammunition coming in with primers that weren't seated properly. They were in sideways, pulling rounds apart that actually didn't have any flash holes. So there was no way that priming compound could reach the powder. And really kind of scared me, to be honest with you. So if I'm going to load ammo, at least I know all of it's been prepped properly. It's been manufactured properly, and it's good to go.
So in your opinion, quality control with the right equipment from a individual is actually potentially better than quality control from a large manufacturer?
I would say so, as long as you put the amount of attention that's necessary to make sure you're getting good ammunition. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That
makes sense to me.
The first time I've ever heard that, but I like that. It's a good way to think about it. Now, how about ammunition loading? You know, you mentioned economy, right? It's less expensive, and obviously it's less expensive. You know, we were talking before the show a little bit about how we load our precision rifle rounds. We reload them because, one, we want a very specific result, but also because, you know, my reloaded precision rounds are about 50 cents a piece. If I were to buy that same factory ammunition, which is essentially I shoot a load very similar to like Federal Gold Medal Match, and they're about $2 a round, $1.50, $2 a round. So I mean, I'm, as you mentioned, about 25% or so of what I would be for a factory round. So that's a big thing for me is economy. But how about from an emergency response standpoint? What do you think about the idea of being able to reload ammunition in case ammunition shortage, in case zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever we call it, you know, the zombie apocalypse. We always refer to that on the show as everyone's wet dream, whatever that is. It might be a civil uprising. It might be a government takeover. It might be whatever, zombie apocalypse, whatever it is. What do you think about a reloading skill and the importance of that from that aspect?
Well, I think what happens is, I mean, you'll see a lot of regulations pop up here and there, and or even talks of regulations like they were talking about with the SS-109s. And when that whole thing was going nuts, I mean, going back to an economy standpoint, prices were doubling, tripling, quadrupling. And at the same given time, I could still buy 62 grain steel core penetrator bullets at bargain rates.
Right.
So I could load whatever I needed. And you'll see that happen a lot with, oh, geez, they'll outlaw this or they'll outlaw that. And then you have all the manufacturers who made the products that were going to be loaded into loaded ammunition, and now they have no market for them. So basically they have to go and sell the components, and you're still able to purchase those components, usually at a cut rate.
Now, under that panic type situation, like we see, you know, I joke with people all the time, like, I'm only in my 30s, yet I've seen like almost a dozen end of the world scenarios.
Yeah, exactly.
And so every time someone's like, oh, the world's going to end, or the Aztec calendar, you know, Obama, whatever, all these different things that everyone's scared about. You know, we always say, well, you know, you kind of buy obviously in the valley as opposed to the peak. So we just wait till the panic subsides and then you buy whatever you want at rock bottom prices. But during that panic, you know, if you haven't done the smart thing and bought cheap and stacked deep, right? If you're in need of ammunition during these crazy panics, aren't components typically the last thing to go? So like ammunition is going to get madly bought, then kind of aren't components the last thing to go?
Usually, you'll see, like you said, the ammunition prices will start spiking, and then you start seeing things that are less likely produced, powders and primers being the two that come to mind right off the bat. Bullets, it seems like anybody can cast lead bullets for pistol calibers, even some rifle calibers with subsonic ammunition and such, but usually powder and primers. And I usually tell anybody if they see powder primers and they need some, or if they just want to have some, just buy it.
So if you were going to say people should stock up on something for reloading, and we're not causing a panic here, people, don't freaking lose your minds, all right? But if you were going to stock up on something to make sure you had enough to load your own ammunition, powders and primers.
Yes, sir, most definitely.
Now, what's the big variance in powders? Like I'm not a great reloading kind of guy. I know what kind of powders I want in my stuff, right? But beyond that, it's like if that powder's not available, I just don't even mess with it. If you we're looking at, I don't know, like let's say I use Varget, right, for my precision stuff. All right. So would it still be a good idea? Let's say I couldn't find Varget. Would it still be a good idea from someone who has as much reloading experience as you, looking at me, who's just a very minimal amount? Would it still be a good idea to stock up on other powders?
Definitely. You find something in the same burn rate. And once again, I would check around, talk to people that you're shooting with and see if they're using anything other than Varget. Varget's been one of those powders that's really, really popular, especially with precision rifle guys.
Yeah. And it's very hard to find.
And it's very, very hard to find, correct. But there's a lot of powders out there that probably are a little less known that probably give decent performance. Some of the Vitivori powders, some of the Nobel Sport Vectin powders do really well in giving decent performance for what you're paying for.
And so you're looking at burn rate. When I'm comparing different powders, maybe I want to replace this powder with that powder because I want some emergency storage of it or whatever. It's the burn rate that I'm looking at.
Realistically, yes. Something that's going to burn the same burn rate as the powder that you selected.
And is that going to be available? Is that information going to be available from like a manufacturer? Is it going to be available right on the package?
For most manufacturers, when they give you reloading information, they'll usually include a burn rate chart on the front showing where their product figures in with all the other products that are out there.
All right. Well, that makes sense.
Give it a Google.
Yeah. Google is your friend,
well,
I guess.
Speaking of the powder and the primers, I was deployed during the last, like right in the middle of the last panic. And when I got home, there was nothing available. And before I deployed, my wife had bought me a reloader. So I was like, oh, well, I'll just load some stuff. So I go to Sportsman's Warehouse and I'm like, oh, I need some powder and some primers. And they were like, yeah, well, so do the 5,000 other people standing there. So I really understand that buying it when it's available and picking it up when you can, because I've actually started doing that again now because I eventually want to get to where I'm reloading some of my stuff. So it sucks if you can't find what you need.
Indeed. Now, what about reloading ammunition from a perspective of like selling? If someone wanted to get into selling their reloaded ammunition, I know you're not like, the ATF or anything, but from selling their reloaded ammunition, is that possible?
You could do it. Realistically, to make any profit on it, you would actually have to get a license, because if I have a license from ATF, I believe it's Class 7, I believe, manufacturer's license. Even when there's lean times, I'm still able to get powder and primers at an affordable price. The other thing that you have to really consider is liability insurance. So by the time if you start really doing the math on it and look to see what people are selling it for, it's pretty much break even unless you have that license from ATF. And then you start adding in what liability insurance would cost you, and it's really, really tight market.
I always wonder because I see so many companies, especially I'll see them a lot of like local ranges, and I was like, my students will ask us, we have a company that we work with out of Northern Arizona that does remanufactured stuff. And we'll always be telling them about it. I'm like, look, it comes in a box, like with a company name and everything on it. So be really careful.
It doesn't come in a sandwich bag with a handwritten label.
I can't tell you how many ranges.
Buy that stuff at the gun show all day long.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How many gun shows or ranges I've been to where they're like, oh yeah, we sell reloads. And you're like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot if it's cheaper. And you walk over there, and it's like in a baggie and you're like, it's not worth the risk.
It's in a Ziploc, and not a good Ziploc either. A cheap one.
Yeah. Not only is it a Ziploc, it's a cheap Ziploc. So if people want to get involved in reloading, what are they looking at doing to get involved? Like I have nothing, let's say I got no equipment and I want to start reloading. What would you recommend to someone who walks in your shop and says, hey, I want to buy a Dillon Precision machine. I'm not going to do a ton of reloading just for me, really. What would you recommend for them?
Well, usually what we'll do is we'll ask people how much ammunition they're going to use in a month, and then sort of gauge which press they should buy from that point on. The best thing I can say without actually making the huge outlay of going and buying equipment right off the bat is buy a reloading manual. Just go look through it, thumb through it. Worst case scenario, you're out $7-8. You pick it up used if you can, Bookman's or whatever. But pick it up, look through it, and see if that's something you really want to get into and are interested in. We do get a lot of people go, I bought the reloader and it was just too much for me, which is really rough, because if you really look at a reloading manual, it's basically like a cookbook. It's going to say use this, put them together, make it this long, and you got ammunition. Some people can't follow cookbooks, unfortunately.
I think a lot of people that think reloading is a good idea also don't take into account the amount of time and energy it takes, because it's pretty quick. It's not difficult. I've sat down at a buddy of mine's Dillon Progressive. I don't remember if it was a 550 or the 650, but we sat down and we cranked out like 200 rounds of 45 and I don't know, about an hour, but there was also about 35 or 40 minutes of prep time for him setting the dies up, setting the powder load up, setting all the primers and stuff up. And I don't think people really think about sometimes the amount of time that they're going to need to put into this, but it's often time well spent, because that was 200 rounds that I had for, I think I spent a total of about $35 for 200 rounds of 45 ACP, which was ridiculous. So, I think people just really need to evaluate, hey, can I take a couple of hours on a Saturday morning or a Friday night, sit around, maybe have some friends over, we'll talk a little bit, we'll load some ammo up and have some good times. So
now, if someone's going to pick up a manual, if I wanted to go walk into Bookman's or whatever and pick up a manual, I want to go on Amazon, what manual do you recommend? Or manuals? Is there a certain writer or a certain company that I should be buying manuals from?
We usually sell people the Lyman 49th manual, which I think actually they're coming out with their 50th now. But the manual's been produced for a number of years. The information, it's really good. It walks you through the reloading process step by step, whether or not you're using a progressive press or a single stage press. But it covers all the things you need to know about case prep, what you're going to have to do to make sure sizing and seating depth, and it also gives you information about pressure and such, so that you're not, straying on the line to be doing something dangerous.
Now, Lyman, that is Lyman.
Correct.
Cool. So for anyone looking for that manual, you said they're about to release the 50th?
Correct.
Cool. So, try to at least find something, I would say, in the high 40s if you're looking for something used. Now, there's two primary, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are two primary types of reloaders. You have a single stage, and then you have progressive. Is there anything else I'm missing in there? There's
something in between. They have a turret press. And basically the difference being a single stage, you're doing one operation at a time. Mm-hmm. And for a single stage press to crank out, 100 rounds, you're probably talking at least an hour. Yeah. And you're doing, like, say, 20 cases. You'll size them all. You'll seat the primers on all of them, powder them, put a bullet in it, crimp it, be done. Most of the presses we sell are progressive presses, and that's every time you pull the handle, you get a loaded round. Mm. The one in between is a turret press, and it has the dies locked in it, and all you're going to do is pull a pin and rotate to the next die. On the single stage, you have to screw the die in and out each time. Mm-hmm. So you lose your settings unless you have lock rings that lock the settings in place. But getting back to the 550, you can actually set all the dies up into one of our tool heads, slide the tool head out, and slide in a different caliber. So if you were loading 45 like you were before, you could take that tool head out, slide a tool head in for 308, and be loading 308 or 06, anything that's based on that 45 ACP cartridge case.
Rock and roll right there, the whole tool head.
It's all set up, powder, sizing, everything else.
Single stage is the thing I have the most experience with, and that is certainly time consuming, because after the case is cleaned and all that, now you're punching out the primers and then you're resizing, blah, blah, blah. And you're doing, like you said, typically we do 20, 25 at a time, and then you pull out that die and you put in the next die, and then you do that. And then it's time consuming, but we thought, right. And I've always been under that common assumption, something that we were kind of discussing before the show as well, that was the best way to do it if I wanted all my rounds to be perfect. From a precision aspect, I want to load them on a single stage so that everything is going to be perfect, exactly the same, exact same overall length, exact same shoulder heights, exact same powder. I don't want any variances because I'm looking for, squeezing that accuracy out of it. But you mentioned something that's not needed on a good quality progressive.
Correct. They're Army Marksmanship Unit, G. David Tubb. A lot of guys out there getting incredible accuracy are loading on 550s and 650s. I guess the nice thing about a single stage is it makes you pay attention to everything you're doing because your attention's focused on one particular case. Mm. And I guess that's where sort of that misconception gets propagated, is basically because you're paying so much attention to one case, there's not 4 cases or 5 cases in the press at a time. It does make you focus a little bit more about how you set the bullet in there, making sure it's aligned correctly and everything else.
Now, we've mentioned several times the 550 and the 650, and at Dillon, those are your two kind of most popular progressives, I would say.
Yeah, they usually battle it out every year for which one's more popular than the other one.
And what is the difference? So we go from single stage, okay, we get that. That's one thing at a time. We go to the turret. All right, that's one thing at a time with every pull of the handle, but then I can just rotate the turret and then do the next action. So I could load around, and was that like 5 handle pulls or something like that.
Correct.
And then I would go into a progressive where I'm loading 4 to 5 rounds a time, right?
Correct.
Now, when I keep going up in progressives, what am I getting?
Basically production rate, 550 going along for pistol ammunition, going at a leisurely rate, you can get about 450 rounds an hour, easy. 650, same production rate, but it adds a case feeder. So it's putting the cases in for you. It's one less movement you have to do with your hand. Okay. So you start doing 650, 750, 800 rounds an hour. And then we have a 1050 that does about 11 to 1200 rounds an hour. And we have a small press, a square deal, which does about 350 to 400 rounds an hour, but it's pistol only.
Okay. And is the square deal also a progressive?
Yes.
It's just capable of doing pistol.
Just only. Pistol rounds, and it's our own proprietary dies. So if you had a sort of an oddball cartridge that we didn't make dies for, you really probably should look at the 550.
Okay. All right. Now, if kind of going back to, I'm a brand new guy, I want to get into reloading. I've bought the Lineman reloading manual. I get the recipes. I understand how the process works. Like John said, I understand the time and energy that's going to be taken for this. I've got the garage space or whatever. I'm ready. I'm all ready to get set up. What do I get? What equipment do I need? Let's say we're not going to do single stage because that's kind of, I think, obvious what you're going to need. Let's say I do want to just get into, some progressive loading because that sounds great. What are the pieces of equipment that I want to buy? What are the things I definitely
besides the reloading equipment, the press itself, and your dies, you're going to need to have a scale, and the scale needs to measure in grains, not grams or anything along those lines. It seems to be a real big confusion with a lot of people, but it needs to measure in grains, whether it's digital, balance beam, or electric. There's other options out there. Some of the manufacturers that make less expensive equipment sell a dipper, and the dipper is basically it's got a certain size to it. You fill it up with a certain powder, and it's going to give you a certain charge weight, so you don't even have to deal with a scale. But just going progressively, you would want to get a scale. You're going to need a set of dial calipers. Some people have them already at their house for checking different machine parts or something along those lines.
And I want to use calipers both for checking things like overall length,
neck sizing, see the tension. Well, not tension, I shouldn't say crimping. And basically also checking bullets. Manufacturers sometimes manufacture bullets that aren't the correct diameter, which isn't going to give you as good accuracy as it would if it was the correct diameter.
All right. Now, how about tumblers?
Tumblers gets into case prep. Basically, you're going to need a tumbler. It's one of those things that it's probably best to have the tumbler because it's going to kind of alert you when problems with cases that are going to run down the road. There's guys out there that'll never tumble their brass. They leave it dirty. They put it in. It ends up goofing the dies up, especially if they're steel dies. It impregnates little pieces of, junk, whatever you want to call it, into the die and ends up scoring it, and it scores your brass too, which basically kind of shortens its case life. But tumblers a great idea. Throw all your brass in after you fired it. A little bit of corn cob if you want it really shiny. Walnut if you want it more of a matte finish on it. And the walnut lasts for corn cob sort of after a while will break down. We sell a polish that you'll throw in there. Be careful. There's a lot of people out there that use Brasso and some other polishes. And in order for that to work, it basically ends up stripping a layer of the brass off. So it takes your brass and starts making it weaker and weaker each time you tumble it. But starting off with brand new clean brass not brand new, I should say, clean to brass, really helps looking for signs of maybe case head separation, cracks, anything that you would end up wasting powder and primer and a bullet, putting it in, and then get to the range and go, oh, wow, this is cracked, or now I'm going to have to go home and pull it apart and try to reuse the components.
Now, what else am I going to need? So we've got a press. We've got the appropriate dies for that caliber. We've got a scale system that can measure in grains.
Correct.
We have some calipers to measure the rounds. We've got a tumbler with, you say walnut, I think is maybe the best option because it sounds like it lasts forever.
Seems like it goes for a long run. Yeah.
Okay. And what else? Any other things?
We sell a separator. I mean, there's a couple different ways to do it. That's just to separate the brass from the actual tumbling media.
So once I pull it out of the tumbler, I'll put it in a separator, and that separates the tumbling media.
Correct.
Now, what would happen if I left tumbling media, if I didn't do that? What would happen if I didn't?
Usually what will happen is, when you go to decap it, the decapping pin will get bent. because the case is full of it, full of media, I should say. But basically all the separator is a little basket with centrifugal force, throws it out. I've seen guys use basically cat litter sifters and stuff like that, and shakers and such to sift it. So if you're doing a couple, maybe 100 rifle cases, it's not a big deal to do it that way. You start doing like 1,000 rounds of pistol ammunition, it starts to be a real pain to try to have to make sure that they're all turned upside down so all the media comes out.
Any other equipment people should be looking at buying?
Oh yeah. If you're going to do any rifle calibers, you're going to need to get a trimmer. All cartridges, after you fire them, they stretch the first couple times. Most of the pistol ones actually start to shrink. They start to go back down in size. Rifles, because it's a bottleneck cartridge, when you fire them, they actually the neck starts to stretch. So you need to go back and trim that back. And rifles, you get significantly less firings on them, especially if it's a semi-auto. If you guys are using bolt actions, you can go to just neck sizing, and extends the life quite a bit.
Now, how about swage tools? Like for people who shoot 5.56 and they want to go down to 2.23, someone picks up a whole bunch of M193, shoots it up, and then they want to go load it. They're going to need a different tool for that, right?
Correct. And there's a couple different ways to go about that. We sell a swager that'll swage military brass, 9mm 40. Actually, there is some military 40 out there from the Coast Guard.
Didn't know that.
45 ACP 223 308.6, and basically all it does is on the back end of the primer, military crimps it in so that it doesn't back out. What it does is it goes into that. You have to deprime it first, I should say. Excuse me. It goes in there and swages the brass, not removing any material, because when you remove the material, it makes it inherently weak. But it just redirects the material around and gives a gentle radius so that you can feed a primer into it.
All right. Any other absolute necessary equipment?
Speaking of primers, you're going to need something to load the primers. Basically, our machines come with primer pickup tubes, sort of like a golf ball picker up, where you basically get it over a primer, push down on it, it picks it up in a tube. You take the tube and load it in the press. We sell a flip tray. There's a couple different companies out there sell flip trays. That's just so that the primers are all oriented so that they're shiny side up.
Which you don't load a backwards primer.
You got
basically.
it.
Okay.
Trying to think of anything else. A trimmer. Yeah, that's really about it for the most part.
All right. Right on. Well, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some common reloading errors and how to avoid them. Basically, the most common mistakes people are going to make that can cause disappointment and or face rearranging, depending on how bad the error is, I think.
Yeah.
But we come back from the break. We're going to be talking more with Jason from Dillon Precision. You're listening to The Arms Room.
Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in their life. I'm no different. Hey everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce, I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552. Or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
If you or someone you know is looking for a new job or career, you need to visit the pros. National Career Fairs at ncfairs.com. National Career Fairs hosts over 300 career fairs a year nationwide. The events are free and give you the perfect chance to meet some of the top employers in your area face-to-face. To find the nearest career fair to you, visit ncfairs.com. Again, that's ncfairs.com. What are you waiting for?
Veterans served us, now it's time we serve them. As a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as a current military member deployed abroad, I would like to take a minute of your time to tell you about Patriot Hills of New York. Patriot Hills of New York is a nonprofit organization providing support, to veterans and their families. They partner veterans in need with over 65 health and wellness organizations, community groups, as well as philanthropic foundations providing no or low-cost services. They've helped over 400 veterans through confidential referral services, assistance with veterans issues, employment placement, as well as educational opportunities. If you need assistance or just want to help veterans by donating your time or services, contact them at info@patriothills.org. Again, that's info@patriothills.org. Visit patriothillsnewyork.com for more information about their services or how you can donate. Our veterans deserve no less. We can give it to them, and you can help.
All right, you're back on the Arms Room at the Cowtown Studio, brought to you today by our good friends over at AR500 Armor. Make sure to check them out at ar500armor.com. Lots of great new products over there. We'll be doing some more videos with them soon.
Ooh.
We got some really cool new videos coming up with them. So
I am excited.
It's going to be super exciting. All right. So we've got Jason from Dillon Precision talking with us about how to get involved in reloading, why you should get involved in reloading. Give us a ballpark on everything we talked about before the break. Like if we were going to buy a press with, let's say, dies for
9 mil and 5.56.
Yeah, let's say dies for 9 mil and 223, right?
Oh yeah.
So that way we would have, very common. I mean, that's certainly what we shoot the most. So
yeah,
a press with those two, a tumbler, with the media, a set of calipers, a what am I looking
separator?
For? A separator, a set of scales, and a swage tool to handle my, going from 5.56 to 223. What would all that cost me?
I would say probably, just ballparking, probably roughly a little under $1,000.
So it's still incredibly affordable.
Yes.
To get all that equipment, everything I would need. Obviously I still have to buy the components, but if you're buying a ton of ammunition anyways, you're shooting a lot, and you're spending right now, I think market rate's 35 cents or so around ish on good 223. And you can buy your components that would basically equal, let's say even they were half that price. Let's say you could even get, let's say 15 to 20 cents worth of components. That's still a pretty good deal.
You're going to make your investment back in like 3,000 to 4,000 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, if you're shooting enough rounds, you're going to make your investment back quickly. Plus the benefit of having these tools for like emergency preparedness,
for the panics
we talked about, for all the panics and craziness. So let's go on to common mistakes, errors, things like that. What are the most, for a brand new reloader, what do you think the most common mistake that's made is?
Usually, to be honest with you, kind of going backwards, is the crimp. Most people, because someone way back when labeled it as crimp, they end up over crimping their cases. They think for some reason that they need to move the brass in to hold the bullet in place. And what it ends up doing is it ends up deforming the bullet. So instead of having a long driving band or bearing surfaces contacting the rifling in one spot, it has two separate spots that are basically trying to twist the bullet apart because there's a little gap in between. And you'll have people over crimp rifle rounds, and all of a sudden their rifle stops shooting real well. And pistol rounds, they can actually over crimp, especially if they're using plated bullets, where the plating will shear off. And you'll look at targets, and the targets will have a hole, and it'll look like a little spiral galaxy coming off it of lead vapors. I think really crimping is probably the most misunderstood portion of the whole deal, because everybody thinks, oh, I got to really, I got to crimp it tight. They crimp it a little bit, and they'll crimp it a little bit more, and then all of a sudden the bullet starts moving in the case, and they're like, oh wow, well I need to put more crimp on it to stop it. And what they're doing is, instead of having two long surfaces where you have the brass and the bullet mating together and having a lot of contact area, they minimize it to a really, really small point of contact. So now there's less surface area making contact with the two.
Now you said something that I've seen a lot of, right? But even with factory ammunition,
I've seen it with certain factory reloaded brands of ammunition,
and that's the spiral galaxy thing, right? And I've seen that a lot on paper, mostly when we're shooting close, like we're doing close quarters training, or we're just doing close marksmanship type stuff. I would say definitely inside of 3 yards or even closer, like contact distance. Is that always going to be from overcrimping a pistol round, or could it be from other things?
Oh, it could definitely be from other things, but you can tell if it's lead vapor. I mean, you can go over and like touch it with your finger and go, oh yeah, that's lead, most definitely.
Okay, interesting. All right, overcrimping. Didn't know that. Learning something new every day. All right, so that's probably the most common one. What are some other common mistakes and errors people make?
Sizing. Pistol caliber is really not that big a deal because usually they're straight wall, except for maybe 357 SIG, 40 Super, or some of these other cartridges with their bottleneck. Anything that has a bottleneck, realistically, you should get a case gauge. Case gauges are a good idea for pistols, just simply because you don't have to take your gun apart and use the barrel to make sure the rounds are sized properly and they're going to go in your firearm. But for a rifle, a case gauge, because you have a shoulder that gets pushed back and the correct sizing for it is a datum line in between the top of the shoulder and the bottom of the shoulder, it's a good idea to have a case gauge. And that case gauge usually is cut with a chamber reamer, a finished chamber reamer, so that you can actually drop the case in there and see if it's sized properly, if the shoulder is pushed back far enough. Ones we sell actually have an overall length on it also. So once it's sized properly, if you hold it in, turn it upside down, you can see if the case needs to be trimmed also. But I see a lot of guys with rifle, they start sizing the case. They go, oh, I'm just going to screw the die all the way down. They create excessive headspace and the case actually cuts loose. You'll get cracking, case head separation, all sorts of other issues. But bottleneck cartridges definitely need to have some sort of case gauge.
Now, you mentioned trimming brass. Mm-hmm. That's a question I have specifically is how much can you trim brass? I mean, how many times should someone be reusing the same piece of brass, especially if they are trimming it a little?
It really depends. It depends on the action. A semi-auto is going to be a lot harder on your brass because, as you can imagine, there's still pressures built up as it's unlocking and the bolts coming back. Bolt action rifles, you can use it, probably 5-6 times. Rifle brass has a lot shorter case life than pistols. Pistols, for the most part, most guys I know just shoot them till they crack because it really doesn't cause any issue. You pick them up, they sound like a cowbell. You're like, okay, look, that one goes in the scrap pile. But pistol, you can just keep shooting them till they crack, or some guys will just keep shooting them till they can't read the head stamp on it. But rifle, at least for me, about 3 or 4 times for stuff I'm shooting out of semi-auto. Bolt action, you can bump it up to maybe 5-6 times if you're pushing it. And depending on, once again, the load, the pressures you're running, all sorts of other stuff. You have to be real careful with rifle stuff, especially if you're shooting bolt action and you're shooting it towards the limit. The primer pocket will actually start to give up and it won't hold a primer in. And you'll start to see a little wisps of residue coming out from around the primer. And you're like, okay, it's probably time to get rid of that brass.
So what are other ways to tell if you're not, keeping some kind of meticulous score or mark? I know guys who like mark their brass and do stuff like that. If you're not that way, and especially with us, it's tough because we'll shoot all these rounds, they hit the ground, and then we're trying to figure, we're not going to keep track of that. We don't know, oh yeah, we shot this one 3 times and that one 2 times. We don't know. So how do you keep track of that? When you're looking at the casing, is there a way to tell, hey, this one's been trimmed too much, this one's nearing the end of its life, I'm about to get case head separation, etc.? Is there a way to tell?
You can inspect the cases. There's a lot of guys that'll take like a paper clip and they'll sharpen the end. They'll go inside and see if they can feel where there's the inception case head separation is going to occur. You'll actually be a small ridge where the brass is thinned out there. For most part, guys just go, okay, look, I'm going to get a lot of brass. This lot of brass, I'm going to shoot X number of times, and they calculate what they're doing. And then at a certain point, whether it be 6 months, a year, they go, okay, look, that brass all goes to the scrap. I'm going to invest in brand new brass and start all over. Okay. Mainly the people I deal with and such, it's match situations. So they'll have a certain lot of brass. They'll call 500 pieces out for specifically match brass. And then the rest of it, they'll use practice all year. They go to their match, they use the brass that stays there because they usually don't let you pick it up. And the rest of the lot, they'll actually scrap it out or use it for smaller matches with loads that are lighter. So they're not pushing as high pressure. Okay. And then leave it.
All right. So other errors or mistakes that people make?
Primer seating. It seems shoot a lot and get to different matches and such, and you always see the guy pulls the gun up and pulls the trigger and the striker or the hammer goes click. You get a lot of people who don't, at least on our presses, you have to push forward to seat the primer, and they don't push hard enough because they're sort of afraid of it. And a primer, because it's made up of three different parts really. It has a cup, an anvil, and priming compound in between. And in order for it to be truly armed, it has to have that anvil and cup pushed into each other. So what they'll do is they'll push the case, they'll push the primer part of the way in the case, and it won't be below flush. I mean, that's usually a good indicator. If you run your finger across it and it's not below flush, that primer probably won't go off. And if they don't push it all the way in, it's basically not set up to ignite. So they'll get a click. And you can usually tell that because if you take that same round, put it in the gun again, fire it again, it'll go off.
It'll fire, right? Yeah. We've seen that.
Seen that a timer 50,000. I don't know. We had a lot.
That's kind of cool to know why we go tap, rack, bang.
Yeah. We had a manufacturing company approach us and say, hey, we want you to shoot this ammo. And they gave us 1,000 rounds to test. And we had 700 in the first 750. We had right around, I believe, 40, high primes. We didn't even shoot the other 250. We took it all back, and we're like, yeah, you guys are not doing this right. If you're doing this, God only knows what else you're doing. So probably a good indication to not use that ammo. But that I think is something I've seen more than anything else with reloaded ammunition has been high primes. Where you would fire, you click, and then if you reload that round, it'll fire. Because of course, that first hit of the firing pin is then properly seating the primer.
Correct.
So I think out of everything, that's the one I see the most.
Yeah.
I've seen a few case head separations, mostly on 50 cal. Actually, when people are reloading their own 50, that's where I'll see 50. Case head separation.
It's a lot of juice.
I've seen some split cases.
I've seen a handful of like no primes.
No primes. Yeah. And
guys will get going on their progressives and they'll stop paying attention and they'll run out of primers. They'll crank out 50 rounds, not even think about it. And they'll box everything up. We go to the range and they're like, oh, what the heck's going on here?
It's kind of tough to do because actually you can feel it going in.
Yeah.
So you see it a lot with new shooters. They don't actually have the feel of it, or they're trying to rush and go through it real quick or something along those lines with the no primers.
Now, what about just 1 or 2 rounds? Because I've gotten some reloaded ammunition before where, you buy 500 rounds and you've got one missing a primer. How does that happen?
Well, getting back to what we were talking about too, sometimes the primer pockets will actually give up the ghost. And if you find the primer in the bag, I mean, obviously not the plastic bag we were talking about previously, but, but if you find the primer in the bag, it's usually that primer pocket gave up the ghost.
Got it. So it's just been shot too many times. It's too open. So that probably is what causes that 1 or 2 random. Well, that makes sense. All right. So what are some other common mistakes?
Powder. Powder's one of those things everybody seems to think that they can just switch anything in between. It's something that definitely needs to. You can't, just because you loaded 5 grains with this powder, you can't grab another pistol powder and load 5 grains exactly, and it's not in the same burn rate. Same with rifle.
So kind of what we were talking about before, where you got to check that burn rate.
Yep, most definitely.
You got to make sure. And if you have a burn rate that would be slower or faster, you've got to make sure to adjust accordingly.
Correct.
All right.
So what would happen if different types of powders got mixed in the same round? Does that ever happen?
Don't want to do that.
That's a kaboom situation.
Yeah, well, and what really happens is people used to do this a long time ago thinking they were getting some sort of benefit out of it. It really doesn't work because the powder doesn't burn the way you would think it does. I mean, you would think there used to be people that would use faster burning powders on top of slower burning powders, thinking the faster burning powders would help the slower burning powders burn. It really doesn't map out that way when you actually look at the pressures.
Sweet.
Now, I have heard, however, that putting the most common issue, and I've never personally seen it happen, but I've
swapping rifle and pistol powder?
Yeah, that people will swap the rifle and pistol powders. And, I've seen plenty of pictures online. I've seen some pretty phenomenal videos online. We have several friends and associates who are big competition shooters, and they've certainly seen it in matches. I mean, how dangerous is that?
Really dangerous, most definitely. I would say if you start looking at some of the powder, if you've been buying powder for a while, start looking at the powder manufacturers. They're changing the bottles, the containers that you're getting powder in so that it doesn't happen. Not to name names, but there's certain manufacturers out there whose powder, their pistol powder, say Tight Group and Varget, the two look exactly the same. And Tight Group is an incredibly fast burning powder. Varget's a little slower burning powder for your rifles. If you gave a case full of Tight Group into your 308-06, 300 Win Mag, it would be quite incredible.
Ooh, yeah. That would have to be, that's a catastrophic failure. That is a rifle parts and potential hand, face, arm rearranging kind of situation.
So that actually turns into a detonation at that point instead of a deflagration.
Right. Now, You're such a nerd. All right.
Hey, man.
So
I know how stuff goes boom. All right.
You impressed me. I'm impressed.
All right.
Easily impressed. All right. So how much pistol powder would have to end up in a rifle cartridge or a rifle casing to create a catastrophic issue? And I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, but the most common time this happens is A, people just don't check their powders, but B, can there be some, like let's say I was changing from rifle to pistol and I'm changing out my powder, in the tube. What if there was just a few grains, kind of hanging out in the tube or whatever? Would that cause a catastrophic issue?
Well, at the charge bar the nice thing about pistol and rifles, at least in our setup, is the charge bar for a pistol caliber is a small bar. Rifle is usually a large bar.
Okay.
Unless you're doing some sort of subsonic loads or something along those lines. So it'd be really difficult to have that occur. And in order to change the bar, as soon as you pull the bar out, whatever powder's in the powder measure is going to trickle out and go out anyways. If you're asking me how much would be okay, you'd have to, it depends on the load, how heavy the bullet is, the firearm you're shooting out of. I mean, if it was some old, 6.5 Arisaka and you jammed a bunch of pistol powder in it, I don't know how much it would hold, versus say Remington 700 or something along those lines. Okay. So
there's not really a science to that. Now, you say yours, of course, we're talking about the Dillon machines have that almost kind of, fail safe situation. What about other loaders? Would all loaders have that capability?
Some of them do. Some that have a charge bar or a bushing charge system. A lot of the ones that are drum activated, which are great powder measures, don't get me wrong, you're not going to be able to empty it out the same way. So the best thing to do would be to completely empty the hopper, turning it upside down, whatever you're going to do, and then operate the drum a couple times to make sure you clear any powder that's hanging up in there.
So if you have one machine that you're going to bounce back and forth from pistol to rifle on, it's either really important to have a fail safe of some kind that's going to kind of prevent you from being a human and making a stupid mistake, or you need to definitely double, triple check yourself.
Well, and I think also starting off, if you're going to a different caliber, first thing you want to do is go back to that scale, check the charge weight, because the charge weight is going to be completely different because they have different specific gravity and such and density.
All right, so give us another common mistake or error before we take our next break.
Okay, we call it belling, but it's also flaring the case. What you usually do for pistols is you'll flare the case open to accept a bullet because you've already sized it down to spec. Some people will overflare it to the point where when they go to crimp it, we get in that same procedure where they don't have good contact with the bullet in the case and they're trying to get all the crimp in a really, really tiny area, or they won't flare it enough because overflaring it also causes your cases to split, at least in pistols. And what they'll do is they'll try to flare it as minimal as they can, and the bullet will actually catch on the edge of it, and you'll see where the brass gets wrinkled, and if somebody's not really doing their QC, they'll go to chamber around, won't chamber, they'll rack it out, and then all of a sudden you'll see that the bullet's actually torn part of the case down. So that would probably be another one in there. Then seating, overall lengths. People shoot the seat bullets way too short, way too long, and then they won't chamber or they won't function out of a magazine or something along those lines.
That's one I've seen too.
I've seen that one,
especially with 223
crinkled brass thing too.
I've seen it with 9.
Yeah.
Well, and it can happen in rifle too. I mean, with the brass, if they don't put the body of the rifle die down far enough when they're trying to seat the bullet in, because that actually supports the shoulders and the chamber, or simulates chamber really, and what it'll do is it'll actually buckle the shoulder because you're trying to shove the case in there or shove the round in there,
and it's kind of catching on the edge there and just buckling that shoulder. And that makes sense. All right, we're gonna take our last break, and when we come back, we're gonna I think we got a couple more errors and mistakes, and then we're gonna talk about Dillon Precision and why you should just buy Dillon Precision and avoid all the hassle of
if you live in Arizona. That's why.
Yeah, plus they're an Arizona company. So we'll be right back. You're listening to the Arms Room.
Veterans served us, now it's time we serve them. As a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as a current military member deployed abroad, I would like to take a minute of your time to tell you about Patriot Hills of New York. Patriot Hills of New York is a nonprofit organization providing support to veterans and their families. They partner veterans in need with over 65 health and wellness organizations, community groups, as well as philanthropic foundations providing no or low-cost services. They've helped over 400 veterans through confidential referral services, assistance with veterans issues, employment placement, as well as educational opportunities. If you need assistance or just want to help veterans by donating your time or services, contact them at info@patriothills.org. Again, that's info@patriothills.org. Visit patriothillsnewyork.com for more information about their services or how you can donate. Our veterans deserve no less. We can give it to them, and you can help. Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in their life. I'm no different. Hey everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce, I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552. Or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
If you or someone you know is looking for a new job or career, you need to visit the pros. National Career Fairs at ncfairs.com. National Career Fairs hosts over 300 career fairs a year nationwide. The events are free and give you the perfect chance to meet some of the top employers in your area face-to-face. To find the nearest career fair to you, visit ncfairs.com. Again, that's ncfairs.com. What are you waiting for?
All right, you're back on the Arms Room. We've got Jason from Dillon Precision in the studio with us today. We've talked about why to get involved in reloading, how to get involved in reloading, and some of the common mistakes and errors. But we've got one more kind of common mistake and error, and that is what, Jason?
The crimp. Basically, we kind of touched on it a little earlier, but it's sort of misunderstood. A lot of people want to put a really, really heavy crimp on cartridges to keep them from moving around, and it limits the amount of contact distance or contact area, between the bullet and the case. When it does that, it starts to move around. It'll slide forward under recoil or back into the case, increasing pressures. So the best thing to do is just kind of minimize the crimp and straighten the case back out, at least for pistol cartridges. A lot of rifle cartridges, there's an expander ball that expands the neck open to accept a bullet. I use a lot of bow-tailed bullets, so it's really not necessary to run that expander ball. The bow-tail bullet kind of funnels it back in there, keeps nice tight surface tension between the bullet and the brass. But yeah, I think probably the most thing that people mess up the most is basically the crimp. They end up over crimping it to the point where, especially on pistol calibers, they'll crimp it so much that it actually looks like a bottleneck cartridge. They'll crimp it and it won't actually go in the chamber because it's making the case squat a little lower just above the web. So probably less is more, definitely with the crimp.
Now I've got a question for you about seating.
Okay.
If you seat a bullet too far in, how far is too far?
Well, usually most people will tell you 10 to 15 thousandths off the lands. The problem with it is every bullet that's manufactured is not manufactured in one specific die. So say if you buy Sierra Match King bullets, where that bullet, let's say for the sake of argument, is 30 cal, where that bullet turns 30 cal can vary 15 to 20 thousandths. So you might have one that you're starting your reloading process with, setting the dies up, that's on the short side. And then when you get towards the end or somewhere in the middle, you'll get one of the ones that's towards the long side. And that one's going to be, if you would set all the bullets 15 thousandths off the lands, that one's actually going to be touching the lands. So that boosts pressure up. It's basically sort of like a firecracker or a pipe bomb. Basically, you're making the pressures go sky high because it doesn't have somewhere for the bullet to go. You need that little bit of free bore before it jumps and hits the rifling. So we sell an item, product, and Hornady does. It's called a bullet comparator. Actually, we get it from Hornady, and what that is a small, it's a small little aluminum piece that is drilled at 30 cal. It comes with an adapter that fits to your dowel calipers we talked about earlier, so you can go through and measure all your bullets and see exactly where they all turn 30 cal. And then what you'll do is cull them into certain groups. These turn 30 cal here, these turn 30 cal here, and try to keep them in certain groups. Then load up those groups together for the utmost accuracy.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, 30 cal bullet is not a 30 cal bullet.
Yeah, boy, that seems like a lot of work.
It's like a whole new world of ammunition that you got to look at.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though.
No, I was agreeing with you.
Oh,
sorry.
I will never just pick up a 30 cal bullet now and be like, all right, yeah,
I'm going to load this thing.
Well, the manufacturers will give you, load it this cartridge overall length, and you're safe. I'm talking about it for the guy who really wants to go.
Oh, God, it's really pushing that.
Yeah, really squeezing it. So we've talked now about common errors, common mistakes. I think really the only dangerous one, the one that could really cause you a lot of damage, is mixing pistol powder into your rifle casings. Everything else sounds like it would really suck and maybe cause a weapon malfunction and maybe cause some breakage. But am I right in saying that the only dangerous one is putting pistol powder in a rifle cases?
That, and I would say probably sizing. I mean, depending on the firearm you're using it in, having a gun fire out of battery would definitely not be a good day.
Yeah, it would definitely jack your face up.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised at actually how well firearms do compared to years past. It's but having something that's loaded a little too long or not sized properly can keep the gun out of battery. And if disconnector is not set properly on certain weapons or something, you could fire out of battery and cause issue.
Okay.
The other option or the other problem that I see quite a bit is back to the powder is people will skip putting powder in it. They'll be setting the machine up,
get a squib,
and they'll get a squib. Mm-hmm. So it may not be a big deal for semi-autos. Guys are shooting full autos. They'll get a squib and then they'll launch another live round right into it.
Start stacking them up there. And now squibs, I have seen squibs crack barrels, and I have seen squibs remove barrels from firearms. I have never seen a squib cause. Obviously that's a catastrophic failure. I've never seen a squib cause injury to the shooter. Have you?
No, the only thing I've ever seen, I've seen one have a plastic framed pistol cut loose. But by the same token, I've also seen cases that are outlived their usefulness, weren't case gauged, have a plastic framed pistol cut loose, and that basically just stinging in your hands, a little bit of burning, but nothing to the point where it warranted a visit to the ER or something along those lines.
Okay. All right. So maybe a few other things to consider as well. Case sizing.
Correct. Making sure that it's sized properly and it's case gauged.
All right. Now, we've mentioned Dillon Precision several times throughout the program. Dillon Precision, by the way. Dillon Precision was on our Arizona list of firearms manufacturers that we did on our buy local and why people should buy local. We had this whole list. I don't know, it's been a month or so ago. So obviously we're huge proponents of everyone shopping locally, right? We're Arizona. We love Arizona. We want people to buy in Arizona, but not, the majority of our listeners are not in Arizona. So why buy Dillon? Why Dillon Precision?
To be honest with you, I think probably the best way to describe it would be customer service. We have a bunch of sales guys on an 800 number all day long, and it's funny because we get a lot of calls about hey, why is my lineman doing this, or why is my single stage doing that, and we try to walk people through and answer all the questions. We have a lifetime warranty. Anything we manufacture, we stand behind 100%. That's been real big for us.
I've heard of guys breaking Dillon stuff years and years after purchasing it, and then just literally walking into the store and saying this broke, and then they go let me get you a new one.
Well, and from our standpoint, it really frees up our sales guys. Yeah. I don't have to sit on the phone and say, okay, what were you doing? How are you doing? Oh, you were in Maine? No. Our products aren't warranted in Maine. Right. It's much easier for me to say, hey, look, it's broke. Okay, what is it? This is this. Bang, I got it in the mail out to you, and then I'm on to the next phone call. That makes life a lot easier on our end. And it's funny because it's sort of a generational thing. We'll get guys that'll bring in stuff and say, hey, this is my grandpa's. I went to his house. He passed away, and it's been sitting for 20 years. Can you guys, rehab it? And basically we'll rebuild it like new. And, from our standpoint, that's another customer that we lost a customer, but we gained another customer. So for us, it works out really well in expediency and in helping the business grow.
And Dillon does have a storefront. So if you're in Scottsdale or near Scottsdale, you're visiting Arizona, you want to go to Scottsdale, you can walk right into Dillon Precision storefront and say, here I am, I want to buy these things.
Yeah, most definitely.
And in your storefront, do you have pretty much everything? I get the Blue Press catalog. So if I open up the Blue Press, is everything in that catalog also available in the store?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And actually, we have machines that are set up, so it's sort of like getting a good suit fitted. You can go in there and they say, okay, look, this is what I want to do. This is how many rounds per hour I want to load. They have a little standee to the side. Go, okay, look, let's go look at this press because this is what you really need for what you're talking about.
So you can actually get hands-on stuff as well.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. I don't think I've ever been in the storefront. I need to
go.
I've
been in there a few times.
I've never been. All right. So why else should someone get a Dillon?
Yeah, for the most part, it's product that actually works. I mean, you get a lot of guys out there that make some pretty weird, smaller guys make some weird oddball like accessories, and it's something you look at and go, well, why would I ever want that or need that? We really try hard to go, look, this is what somebody really is demanding. This is what the customer wants. We need to be able to do that. And we try to stay really well versed with products that maybe we don't offer, but other people offer for our products and say, hey, look, you can get this. Good example, we don't manufacture a bullet feeder. About 40% of our business is overseas. If we have a bullet feeder on it, it actually makes it some sort of reloading machine that we have to adhere to ITAR and all State Department approval and all this other stuff in order to sell it. So we don't offer any bullet feeders, but we could tell you, hey, look, so-and-so makes one, so-and-so makes one, all these other companies, and help you along that route if that was something you really had to have. But I think there's a lot of people out there that make really superfluous stuff for reloading equipment just simply to get $1 from you for it. And that's really not our game. Our game is we want you out there reloading. We want somebody to come up and say, hey, you got a really nice group, or what's going on there, or why are you picking up your brass? That's usually the favorite question. Why are you picking up your brass? Well, because I reload and it's one of the expensive parts of it.
Now, you guys also have like complete packages. So like if I were to walk in right now and say, I want a 550, I want everything set up for this caliber, whatever, I can walk out the door with everything that I would need. And for the most part, it all kind of comes with that package. So I don't have to worry about trying to part out, I need this part from this company and that part from this company and this part from that company. Like I get everything from Dillon and everything's going to work together. And I don't have to get any cool adapters. I don't have to fiddle fart around with anything. It's all just going to fit.
Correct. Yeah. And that's really what it is. We have starter packages for each machine. So if you say, hey, I want to get a 550, we'll give you the starter package, and it's got like the dial calipers, the reloading manual, the scale, a couple other things. I think we didn't touch on case lube. It's a good idea to lube your cases. People get really weird about, I don't want to lube them because then I got to polish the lube off it. But it makes it so much easier, especially if you're going to sit down and load 2,000 rounds of 9mm. It's a lot easier on your arm and your shoulder, even though we have a lot of mechanical leverage and advantage, I guess, when reloading, but still it ends up making it a lot easier to lube the cases.
So any kind of parting advice or words on reloading or Dillon Precision in particular?
I would say, tell anybody that's thinking about reloading, save your brass, because usually that's the biggest outlay. Everybody starts going, okay, I might reload one day, I might not reload. If you save the brass, worst case scenario, you end up taking it to the scrap guy and he gives you $2 a pound for it. Best case scenario, you end up reloading, become one of our customers, and you've already got a head start on the components you need to start loading your first 1,000 rounds or whatever.
And anyone who wants to learn more about Dillon Precision, DillonPrecision.com.
Most definitely.
Super easy. You can get the Blue Press catalog every month. I like the Blue Press catalog because in the Blue Press catalog, there are articles about shooting. And they're great articles. You've got probably, I would say at least 3, it seems like, every month.
Correct.
That have something about, there's one usually about like competition shooting. There's one about loading. But my favorite articles in the Blue Press are the ones about the historical firearms.
No, that's a gentleman named John Marshall does that for us. And actually he put together, we sort of helped him put together a book containing all those old articles.
Oh, very cool. So, you can go right on the Dillon Precision website, order your copy of the Blue Press. It is monthly, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's monthly. Yeah, so it's monthly, gets sent to you. Any new products are highlighted on there. There's tons of information about their products. Definitely check out Dillon Precision. Jason, thank you so much for coming into the studio, man.
Thank you, Glenn.
I appreciate it. All right, so next week, we are going to be talking about the armed lifestyle and why we live it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Oh, crap.
And John.
That'll be fun.
Is going to be leading the discussion.
And I'm hoping to have a special friend with me. I don't know. I got to get somebody else in here. Because nobody wants to stare at my face.
You got to find a friend.
Thanks,
is that what you're saying?
I got to find a friend.
Thanks, buddy. I'll be here.
Oh, okay.
All right. So check us out next week. Make sure that in the meantime, you check out ar500armor.com.
Mm-hmm.
Check out Cowtown at azcowtown.com. Obviously, make sure you check out Dillon Precision at dillonprecision.com, and also check them out on social media. All the places I just mentioned are on social media. I think everyone checks out social media before they check out websites anyways. So tons of information out there available about them. A couple things. One, we are making our new calendar. So if you have input on what you would like to see, the shows you would like to listen to, topics, guests, etc., please make sure you send us an email or get on social media and drop a line to us about what you'd like to hear on the next 3-month calendar. And tonight, looking forward to going out to the Veterans Action shooting match.
I'm excited.
This match filled up quickly, but we still have 2 more matches, June 8th and July 13th. If you haven't registered for them yet, please make sure you register them. You can contact us directly through social media or through our website, independencetraining.com, and that will get you on the roster. That event free, always, to veterans, free ammo, free guns, free fun. No excuse for not showing up.
That's right.
All right, until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and train hard. You've been listening to The Arms Room.
For the land.